familiar force shall arrive to claim what is his. She holds the mystery of my rebirth. For when I beckon her, I will return to claim what is mine. She has spoken. It is time. The end of the world as you know it is here.
Just seen.
If you smell what the Rock is cooking.
WBCB presents Pro Wrestling Weekly.
Tell me he didn't just say that.
Call in with a question or comment at 215-949-3232 or 888-922-2149.
The Tower of Power, too sweet to be sour, funky like a monkey, oh yeah.
And now, here's your host of Pro Wrestling Weekly, Fearon Derry.
It doesn't matter what your name is. Really? Yeah!
We are on. We are back. Welcome to 2012. The mystery is solved. Welcome to another edition of Pro Wrestling Weekly, the first of many for 2012. Hopefully it'll be 52 of them, but I don't have a calendar in front of me to tell me how all that's going to work necessarily. Fearon Derry here with you, back after a 2-week hiatus, and man, is there a ton of stuff to talk about. Most notably, the return of Chris Jericho after a 16-month hiatus. Yeah, you thought 2 weeks off was a lot. 16 months away from the wrestling ring. We saw Chris Jericho back, and as you heard in the clip, a rather interesting return, to say the least, and it's left a lot of people scratching their heads. I actually liked it. For those of you who didn't get the chance to see it, Jericho, he came out, he had the flashy jacket. It almost was reminiscent of his initial WWE debut back in 1999. Although he went to the ring, he slapped hands with all the fans. He got the crowd all fired up and proceeded to do that for about 10 minutes before heading back up the ramp and leaving. So while everybody was cheering him upon arrival, you heard some scattering of boos near the end, and it was amazing. It was a promo that told a lot of information and raised a lot more questions without a traditional promo, without anything being said into the microphone. It was interesting, it was different, it was daring, and I liked it. I want to know what you think out there. What do you think? Where do you think Jericho goes from here? Where do those videos, the whole end of the world as you know it, how do those all tie in? I put some speculation on the Completely Damaged blog. Of course, you can check that out at completely damaged.com. I'm thinking since this is probably Jericho's last run with the company. I mean, he's in his early 40s at this point. I want to say he's 41 years old. I don't know how much of a run he's necessarily got in him. Maybe Jericho's going for a career full circle type thing. And I thought if that's the case, that's rather brilliant. Because all he did as he was out there was get the crowd fired up. You know, lots of yes and come on, baby. Yeah, that was what he did back in his Lionheart days. So maybe what we saw was kind of a snapshot of the Lionheart era of Chris Jericho's career. Lots of getting the crowd fired up and absolutely no mic time. That was pretty much Chris Jericho from about 95 until 97 or 98. So, I mean, if that's what they were going for, and that leads to, over the course of the next few weeks, the return of the list of 1,004 holds. Of course, you remember that, hopefully, from his feud with Dean Malenko, where he mentioned armbar a few times. And perhaps even a return of Ralphus. I'd be all about that. Of course, his personal security guard from the late WCW days of 98 into 99 before coming over to the WWE. Of course, since the last time we were on, TLC happened, and CM Punk, he retained the WWE Championship, and it looks like, well, they've already got a title shot set up for the Royal Rumble, and it's going to be Dolph Ziggler challenging CM Punk for the WWE Championship. Special guest referee, none other than the interim Raw General Manager, John Laurinaitis, just to shake things up a little bit. The only matches set up so far for the Royal Rumble, of course, the Rumble match itself, which at this point it looks like after the debacle last year, they've reduced it back down to the standard 30 men after realizing that 40 was just a little too much. At least in my opinion. What do you think out there? Do you think that they should stick with 40? Did you like it? Did you think it was too much? Do you think they should go even more than 40? Or do you think that 30 is right about where they should be? We'll talk a little bit more Rumble in the upcoming weeks as we get closer to the event. We still have 3 weeks to go on that. Also, a lot of interesting bits and pieces and news, and I'm going to start throwing some of them out there to get your thoughts on all of them here. Well, first of all, WWE, they've been hit with the injury bug a little bit. Of course, Mark Henry, he had a bit of a groin issue for a little bit that actually cost him the World Heavyweight Championship at the TLC pay-per-view, which was the day after the last time we were on here. And Big Show beat Mark Henry in that chairs match, and then right afterward, well, Mark Henry got a few shots in after the match, DDT'd the Big Show onto a couple of chairs, and outruns Daniel Bryan with his Money in the Bank briefcase, and in a matter of 7 seconds, pins the Big Show to become the new World Heavyweight Champion. Mark Henry, he's back in action, but he was sidelined for a couple of weeks while we were on the hiatus. But some other notable injuries, Randy Orton and Alberto Del Rio, they'll be missing some substantial time, or some substantial time, easy for me to say, due to injuries. Alberto Del Rio suffering a groin tear that'll sideline him for 4 to 6 weeks. That could potentially have him back right around the Royal Rumble. And Orton, looks like he'll be out a little bit longer due to a back injury that he had suffered. He actually mentioned it in a Twitter post saying, "I'm getting a lot of questions about my back. What happened is I herniated a disc, in other words, leaked disc fluid, between my L4 and L5 in my lower back." That's in the lumbar region for those of you anatomy majors out there. Said, had some strength loss in my left lower leg, time off to let the inflammation go down and try to strengthen the muscles in the lower back. And, of course, from Kevin Nash's match against Triple H, that sledgehammer ladder match, Nash will be out up to 6 weeks, according to WWE.com, following that TLC match. Let the speculation begin about the possibility of seeing Kevin Nash in the Royal Rumble, as we don't have any official names or entrants yet named for the 30-man over-the-top rope event coming 3 weeks from now. That was something I loved as a kid about the Royal Rumble, the prospect, the possibility, who were the different names who were going to be in there, and even though you knew that generally only about 5 or 6 of the 30 had a legit shot, it was just fun to see all the different names. I mean, going back to when I was a kid, I mean, sure you knew Lex Luger, Bret Hart, names like that were definitely near the top, and Yokozuna, of course. And then you had Adam Bomb as kind of a quirky outside one, for example. And just throwing various examples out there. And like I said, we'll go more over the Royal Rumbles and look back at the past in the upcoming weeks as we get closer to this year's Royal Rumble, the 25th Royal Rumble in WWE history. So a lot of nostalgia there. And speaking of nostalgia, gotten a lot of feedback. I actually fell a couple days behind on the Today in Wrestling History posts on the Facebook page, of course, WBCB Pro Wrestling Weekly, but a lot of response to an anniversary from this past Wednesday, January 4th, looking back 13 years ago now, still in 2011 in my mind here, looking back 13 years to 1999, Monday Nitro from the Georgia Dome in Atlanta. Of course, Hulk Hogan beating Kevin Nash to win the World Heavyweight Championship in the infamous finger poke of doom incident. I'm sure a lot of you remember that out there. And of course, for those who don't, Nash and Hogan were set to square off, and then Hogan literally poked Nash in the chest. Nash went down like a ton of bricks, and Hogan covered Nash to win the WCW World Heavyweight Championship and reform the NWO for what probably was about the fourth or fifth time at that point, or at least unite NWO Hollywood and the NWO Wolfpack, the white and black and red and black factions. At that point, the NWO had pretty much already jumped the shark a little bit, and that was just kind of adding to it. And that was also the same night that, because Raw was taped, Tony Schiavone gave away the results, saying that Mick Foley, who had wrestled back then as Cactus Jack, would win the equivalent of the World Championship over in WWE, of course, the World Wrestling Federation Championship, and had that infamous comment of, that'll put a lot of butts in the seats. And then, of course, 600,000 people ended up changing the channel over from Nitro to Raw to see Mankind or Mick Foley win the World Wrestling Federation Championship. So some rather interesting thoughts, to say the least. Looking back, we can certainly get your take on the finger poke of doom and other instances in wrestling history. Dan, of course, chiming in saying it was a bad day for WCW, and that was kind of the start of a bad couple of years that eventually led to WCW being bought out. And of course, you can leave your Facebook feedback on the Facebook fan page, WBCB Pro Wrestling Weekly, and I will make sure to go ahead and get to it. Of course, John actually breaking the news back on December 28th about Randy Orton's back injury. So thank you for bringing that to the table. And Mike, I'm going to get to your comments from the last show. Of course, my technology, it's a wonderful thing. It didn't exactly update right away, so I wasn't able to get your comments on the air last time around, but I'll dig those up here on the other side of a little bit of a business here. Some other follow-up news. Following up from a couple weeks, actually probably about 3 or 4 weeks ago now, the allegations by Hulk Hogan's ex-wife of a homosexual relationship between Hogan and Brutus the Barber Beefcake, his longtime best friend. Well, Barbara Leslie, the estranged wife of Brutus Beefcake, she chimed in, commented to the National Enquirer regarding Linda Bollea spreading that rumor that Hogan and Beefcake had a homosexual relationship. I don't know, you can't help but laugh at some of this stuff. She said, "I've watched my husband and Hulk interact for the past 20 years, and there have been many times when I felt they were much too close for comfort," according to Barbara Leslie. "I have absolutely no knowledge of a homosexual relationship going on between my husband and Hulk, nor has Linda ever shared anything with me that would indicate that she has knowledge of that. But I've been acquainted with her for a long time and have never known her to say anything that serious unless she could back it up. She must know something." She also stated that Beefcake has not spoken with their daughter in 3 months, yet speaks with Hogan a few times each day, just to add to the speculation. Hogan, meanwhile, the Hulkster, he filed a defamation of character lawsuit against his ex-wife Linda for spreading that rumor during her book tour interviews. And Ed Leslie, he's claimed that he intends to sue as well. Wife Barbara was very careful with her wording, despite saying that Hogan and Beefcake, quote, "share a bond tighter than most marriages, so maybe they should just run off and get married," end quote. Interesting stuff there. Coming up, well, we've got TNA's Genesis pay-per-view tomorrow. We'll take a look at that. I've got my predictions certain to go wrong there. Some more Facebook feedback. A potential NBA star who might be getting involved in WrestleMania 28. We'll talk a little bit about that. Also, we've got a Travis Tomko update after that robbing of a CVS pharmacy and using some oxycodone in a Chili's restaurant bathroom. Shawn Michaels getting some street cred, and a whole bunch more. Let me give you the numbers. 215-949-3232. Toll free at 888-922-2149. We'll get you right in on the other side. Dial on up. You can also chime in on the Facebook fan page, WBCB Pro Wrestling Weekly. And if you take a look on YouTube, we have archived shows now. Courtesy of YouTube, just type in WBCB Pro Wrestling Weekly. It'll come right on up there. And I'm usually good about getting those uploaded within 24 hours after the show, although we all have our lazy and procrastinating moments and things of that nature, but I'm pretty good with it. Also, we got to talk about Beth Phoenix, the Glamazon. She is on the tweeting warpath. All that and more here on Pro Wrestling Weekly, here on 1490 WBCB and online at WBCB1490.com.